476 AD, the great Roman Empire has collapsed, ending its period of domination. The emperors who ruled and shaped the region have been dissolved, and Western Europe has become fractured. For centuries, Europe is dominated by a line of German kings who called their domain the Holy Roman Empire. But by the 12th century, a loose collection of Italian republics is taking shape. Together, they aim to recover the past glory of Rome. They would revitalize Europe and engineer the blueprint for the modern Western world.
Hi, I'm Peter Weller. And in 2001, I came here to the city of Florence to finish a master's degree in Italian Renaissance art history at Syracuse University in Florence. The Italian Renaissance is as overwhelmingly mind-blowing as it is beautiful. It is the most impacting epoch of the last millennium. It is the age of invention with Da Vinci and Copernicus and Gutenberg, but it is also the age of the cult of personality. It is the time when that unknown artisan or craftsman will become the artist. It is the time when that nameless builder will become the architect.
In the 12th and 13th centuries, Italy is really beginning this sort of rebirth. Because what's happening is that stability has been reinstituted onto the peninsula, mainly through the Holy Roman Empire, through the system that we call feudalism. The city is reborn.
Within these newly liberated Italian cities, a new kind of leader emerged.
The rulers of the Italian city-states are the merchants. They're not the traditional aristocracy. They're not the traditional nobles. And this produces this extraordinarily vibrant urban life in the 13th century.
Families like the Medici went from running banks and businesses to running cities. Wealth bought power, and power could buy art and architecture. These once small towns soon began to build on a massive scale, always with an eye at outdoing their neighbors and maintaining independence.
The foundation for the Renaissance is the city. Everything that happens in the Renaissance, from art, architecture, engineering, literature, all the things that go on depend upon the city.
One ambitious city seeking power in this new age was a growing republic situated along an important trade route between France and Rome. Its name was Siena.
I come here to the Piazza del Campo once a year to witness that medieval harangue on horseback around here called Palio. 3 times around this Campo, 90 seconds of speed and violence on bareback horses. When the horses run, they pass this magnificent 15th century sculpted fountain called the Fonte Gaia by Jacopo della Quercia. Now today, when we turn on a tap, we just take it for granted that H2O is going to come out. But the Sienese needed this fountain because when they were making all this loot, prosperity begets a city jam-packed with people. And more people demands, as we have seen with Persia, with Carthage, with Rome, with the Maya, more water.
But providing sufficient water for this city would prove to be a massive challenge.
Siena doesn't have a river very close, so they had to find this water somewhere else. They thought they could find another way to go and search for water. And that way was building some tunnels underground.
By digging a network of underground tunnels called bottini, the workers could tap into small natural springs and groundwater that surrounded Siena. Slowly, the water would seep through the terrain into these narrow tunnels and holding tanks. But excavating these bottini was no easy task. Workers used shovels, picks, and chisels to chip away at the calcite deposits in the tunnel, working in dark, dusty conditions, often no more than a few feet high.
A bottino like this one would sometimes run for miles and miles, so the engineers had to know just where in the heck they were going. So every so often they dug a hole up to the surface, and these holes were called occhi, or eyes. It would give the engineer a sense of where the direction of the bottino would be, and if they were wrong, they could redirect the bottino.
The water would navigate through the barrel-shaped tunnels, turning into different parts of the city where it was needed most, and coursing underneath the busy streets into the fountains around Siena, like the Fonte Gaia.
Now, these channels had to be pitched at an angle ever so slight, imperceptible to the naked eye, less than 1 degree, because if the water flowed too steeply, it would overwhelm the system. So to keep this from happening, the engineers used an instrument called an archipendolo. It's nothing but a pendulum. It's a stick with a string and a weighted ball or stone at the end. No matter how much you pitch the stick, the string will always remain vertical, giving you a vertical line in a relationship to the tilt of the horizontal stick. In this way, the water would flow quietly and evenly into Siena and fill up the Fonte Gaia.
By the year 1345, more than 10 miles of tunnels were functioning underneath bustling Siena. As a result, Siena continued to grow and prosper.
More water brought more people to the boom town. More people to the boom town, more turf is needed. Pretty soon, Siena controls most of southern Tuscany. Now, this prosperity and this land encroachment, if you will, would seriously become the burr in the saddle to one of its neighbors.
Florence and Siena are the two dominant republics in Tuscany.
It was a rivalry on all levels: economic, political, artistically. And in the 13th century, the city-state of Siena, in all three of these categories, was probably Florence's superior.
The two republics would go head-to-head until Siena delivered a crushing blow at the Battle of Monteperti in 1260.
Siena fights Florence. And to put it bluntly, Siena kicks ass. Florence goes home in humiliation and defeat. But guess what? That ain't gonna be for long.
The hydraulic engineering that made Siena the place to be couldn't sustain it through one of the greatest natural disasters the world had ever seen.
In 1347, the Black Death struck. And according to the eminent humanist writer Giovanni Boccaccio, who witnessed the Black Death, the disease killed so fast that you could lunch with your friends and dine with your ancestors in heaven. One conservative estimate is that Siena lost over 60% of its population in a matter of months. One thing is for certain: after the Black Death, Siena would never be a major player again on the stage of early modern Italy.
That singular event probably marks the end of Siena's role on a kind of international scene, and it also marks the beginning of Florence's rise to power.
The city of Siena was shattered. It would leave the door wide open for its arch-rival, Florence, to step into the void and engineer its own rise to power and glory, culminating in one of the most magnificent monuments of the modern era, a structure no one thought could ever be built. Siena's Bottini system was functioning as the city's primary water source until 1914. In the 13th and 14th centuries, cities are the power centers of Italy. But Florence is in a class by itself. The ruling elite is thriving, with money to burn. Man and his unlimited potential are taking center stage. It's a revolutionary idea called humanism.
Humanism, quite simply, is an interest in the ancient world. In Italy, all you had to do was look around at the ancient ruins and understand how great man had been in the ancient world. It was all there. If we could imitate that building, if we could take the principles of that building and apply it to our buildings, then we'd have something really remarkable.
But when the Black Death struck Europe in 1347, Florence was not immune. Practically half the city's population was wiped out. It would take the region more than half a century to recover. But it would be a recovery like no other the world had ever seen. It was called the Renaissance, which means literally rebirth or revival. Throughout Tuscany, an elite patron class of super-rich families would wield their private fortunes to commission magnificent projects to work for the people.
There is an appetite among those who survive to enjoy life, to do other things, to understand or to sense that the life is to be exploited in some way for those who are alive.
The Medicis of Florence, one of the wealthiest families in Italy, would lead the way in regaining the glory that had been Rome, restoring it in Florence and transforming the city into the new Athens.
The structure of patronage has changed. Patrons are using artists and architects to celebrate themselves.
The centerpiece of this effort would be the cathedral in the heart of Florence.
They've never seen a structure that looks like the one they want to build. Right? That's a matter of ambition, of idea.
See that big old church behind me with that scaffolding on it? It's called Santa Maria del Fiore, otherwise known as the Duomo, or Cathedral of Florence. It was built by a guy named Arnolfo da Cambio around 1200s, but you know what? He was dead before it was ever finished. Arnolfo intended for the church to have a dome, but he's dead, so the church stands for a whole bunch of decades without any dome on it at all. Finally, in the 1400s, it's left up to a guy wearing a real genius suit named Filippo Brunelleschi to not only change the entire idea of building, to become an architect, but to make the entire field of architecture a design.
Brunelleschi had grown up in a middle-class family and was expected to become a government bureaucrat like his father. But Brunelleschi was interested in the art of design and first became a master goldsmith.
It's only in his early 30s that he then moved over and began to become what we now call an architect.
Now, Brunelleschi is a maverick and he's brash. His dad is a notary. Brunelleschi wants to study sculpture. Wonder how his dad reacted to that one, huh? Probably like my old man reacted when I told him I wanted to go to New York and become an actor. In any case, by his early 20s, Brunelleschi is a pretty fair goldsmith. Now, in 1401, the baptistry decides it wants to replace its doors, so they hold a competition. Competition comes down to two guys, Brunelleschi